Yes.
Is that working out okay? Heroes of California. You should be able to see that on your slides. We're going to start off with John Kongsgaard Rosé. In the process of hosting this event, we had a little vintage update. So potentially some of you have the 2021 or 22, where all the jars were poured from the 2022. John Kongsgaard is able to source fruit from a number of ideal spots. He's an amazing winemaker, and we've got a video to teach us about John Kongsgaard. Let me know if you can see this okay. I don't hear that. That's a problem.
Yeah, I can see it. I can't hear it.
I can't hear it either. Let me see if I can make noise without being on the video.
Usually when you're about to play video, there's an option you have to press audio.
I think I understand why, because you're actually hearing me on the phone instead of on my computer. So give me 1 second to fix that. Wine production for the state of California, and really kind of shows you what we could do if we wanted to. There's some brief amount of time also spent at the old Christian Brothers Winery, which is now owned by the Guest Jeans magnate Marciano, who's redeveloped that property. In 1976, he was working at Stag's Leap. That was probably during Warren Warnowski's era, and fantastic lineage to kind of get your feet wet before you really sink your teeth into the production of your own wine. Though there was a third student of Michel Rolland, a young man named Bill Harlan. Not a bad class to be mentioned in the same voice as Selma Long, Bill Harlan, and John Kongsgaard. Now, there's another note here that Michel Rolland, being French, didn't speak English, so John learned from him speaking Spanish. Fascinating. So John got the task of working some pretty extreme vineyards in the Napa Valley, in cooler climate sites, more European references, and really kind of set the tone for his own brand, Kongsgaard. These Kongsgaard wines are really rare and hard for us to get as a wine store. But when we get them, they sell at absolutely highest prices. And the people that collect these wines are willing to pay dearly for them. There's a mythical wine called the Judge now, that is California's top Chardonnay production. And it's only top because if you rank things by price point, this wine sells for almost $1,000 a bottle for California Chardonnay. That puts it in the same kind of range as many of the great Premier Cru, Grand Cru producers of Burgundy. And I think it's rightfully there. Something so limited, hard to get. Yeah, California can make some great Chardonnay, so why not? John's also a great producer of Syrah and makes some really good Cabernet as well. His rosés are also stunning and really kind of show you the quality level. Nothing will let you down under the Kongsgaard name. Most of his fruit is coming off of the Hudson Ranch in Lower Carneros, but he also maintains his own estate at the top of Alice Peak. Kongsgaard wines are something to appreciate because they're rare, because of they're made by the man that is willing to stay behind the scenes and stay comfortable, making about 4,000 cases a year and not wanting to be in the limelight too much. Sure, he doesn't mind selling his wine for absolutely top dollar and making a little bit more money than others do on the smaller side of the spectrum, but someone's got to take that flag and be the leader. And John Kongsgaard is absolutely the leader in California Chardonnay, and his quality transcends through all the wines of his production. If you like this video about John Kongsgaard, please subscribe to my channel and come and taste with me on Wednesday nights at Zoom Into Wine. Maybe buy some wine from my family store.
I think we know the sales pitch. Let's move on. That's my video on John Kongsgaard, and I will now exit that screen. Exit that video. And I apologize, from the very beginning of the video, we were talking just about his history and what makes John Kongsgaard who he is, which is really the entry point that he made in the Napa Valley in the 1970s, early 1980s, working for Suha Newton and developing the unfiltered Chard and Merlot, which were kind of iconic. And I remember in 1997, when I started selling wine, it was Newton Unfiltered Chardonnay was at the top of the charts. That was the best wine in the marketplace, the best Chardonnay in California. And I was awarded many, many awards that really got it there. Assuming you hadn't heard that before, if you had, I apologize. So this rosé blend comes obviously from his growing of Syrah, and he's able to pick the get rid of this black box here. He's able to pick the Syrah at different moments, giving us some very crunchy, dense, weighty character. This wine could, in a blind glass, if you had a black glass, you might even think that this is a full red wine. This has a lot of incredible character to it. This is not your thin, watered down, light as air type of rosé. This is a full gusto type of rosé, and really kind of represents the fruit quality that John Kongsgaard is willing to pay for, and you're going to pay for it because he's paying for it, and he's putting his name on it. And rosé with a Kongsgaard name, this is a $75 bottle. I'm allocated 12 bottles a year. That's it. And I just got all of my 2022. We used quite a few of the bottles for this program tonight, but we do have a little bit left. So if you enjoy this, you want to have something that's age worthy. Not many people would talk about aging rosé. This is definitely something that would go 5, 6, 7 years and continue to develop. I wouldn't press it past that point, but this is the youthful. If you're tasting with the small jars with me today, we're tasting the 2022. You can see how youthful, how tight, and how tightly spun this wine is. It's got a lot of character to it. When we do these heroes tastings, the idea is to introduce you to top personalities, to be able to educate us all about the name brands that make up the categories. Kongsgaard is absolutely a name that you've got to have in your discussion points when you're talking about some of the top producers, especially when it comes to Chardonnay. But you would love all of his wines. Our second winemaker is of the similar ilk. We're talking to Tony Biaggi, and we're going to taste the 2020 Kent Ritchie Vineyard. This is a very special single vineyard designate from the Russian River. He gets a very small amount of this fruit, and the Russian River is in Sonoma. It's one of the top vineyard sites. Some of the names that make a Ritchie Vineyard Chardonnay, names like Marc Aubert, certainly Costa Brown, and other really fancy high-end producers.
Heroes of California Wine allow us to talk to amazing wine figures, and Tony Biaggi is on the Zoom with us today. Tony's a brand unto himself. He has been involved in the formation of this California wine industry at probably the most impactful time in the history of California wine. You have worked at so many great producers. You've got so many projects. There's a lot to know about Tony Biaggi. Good morning, Tony. Thanks for making time for us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Thanks for working with my wines, and thank you. That's a nice intro. So on a Wednesday morning, it's a little much to digest, but thank you.
Tony, where did you come from? How did you start in wine, and what have you been up to and up until now? Just like
Sure, not a problem. Fifth generation Bay Area, hence the label on my wine. It's a play on the California flag. My parents, came from modest means, lived on the peninsula, San Mateo to be pretty precise. And my stepfather was a collector. Before he met my mom, my parents divorced when I was very young. And we were all very, very close. My dad was in the next town over, and I actually lived in Belmont. My dad lived in San Mateo. I would say San Mateo because people know it better. Both of my parents, my fathers collected, but my stepdad was a little more cool about it. He collected Ridge Zins back in the 70s. He lived in San Jose, would go up to the Ridge on the weekends and hang out. And so wine was always around the house. My real father, my biological father, collected more Bordeaux. He thought he was a bigger collector than he was because he was a police officer, did have a lot of money, but he still drank really good wine as well. And so it was always around the table. We always had wine around the table, and I was always sort of encouraged to do my own thing. My stepdad was sort of he was always an early adopter of things, believed in doing what you wanted to do. And really my dad was too. So I was really blessed with parents that loved me unconditionally and wanted to be a winemaker. There was at the time, there wasn't going to be a lot of money in it, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to just be outside. The whole thing. I saw it the other day on Instagram. If for any of you out there remember the movie Say Anything with John Cusack, where he gives a whole speech about, I don't want to make anything bought or anything made or sell anything bought. I mean, it's a long speech, but I kind of identified with it. So blessed to go to Davis. I was recruited to wrestle. I got into wrestling last second because it was either detention. For any of you who might know me, love to talk. And I think everybody that's going to be on this loves to talk. I saw who you're going to be featuring today. I know a couple really love to talk. So it was either go to wrestling practice or go to detention. I went to wrestling practice and got very good at it very quickly. So I got recruited to wrestle at Davis, and took a winemaking class from Ann Noble, who created the wine aroma wheel, and fell in love with it. Yeah, and so I immediately knew that's what I wanted to do. So I took 2 internships, one at Dry Creek Vineyard in 92, one at Hess Collection in 93. Started working retail in 93 at a wine store called St. Helena Wine Center. Back in the time, it was sort of the preeminent wine store, right when everything was exploding, right when, disposable income became better for everybody that could buy fine wines and enjoy them. And, you said earlier that, I was probably one, I think, class behind sort of the creators of the new Napa Valley. John Kongsgaard, who's going to be a part of this, I would consider him sort of someone I looked up to. Tony Soder, Bob Levy, Tom Rinaldi, whom I worked for at Duckhorn for 5 years. Those are the people I looked up to as sort of like the next great winemakers. Those are the people who sort of made the early 90s happen. And Tony Soder, of course, being one of them. Heidi Peterson, of course, I don't want to forget Heidi, and really Helen Turley, too. So those are the people I looked up to. Worked at Duckhorn for 5 years out of college, started Paradox for them, worked for Mark Neal for a very short period of time, helped him get his brand off the ground. But this was a very much a formative time where all these brands were starting. So you were able to touch a lot of things. Then I went to work for Plump Jack, and that's sort of where I made my name for myself. 10 years at Plump Jack, started Cade, started Odette for them. And then in 12, I started my own consulting business. My first client was Hourglass, where I'm now a partner, still partner and winemaker. And part of the deal is Jeff allowed me to make my own wine, where I still make it at Hourglass today, which is the wine you're trying today. So, and right now I have about 7 different clients. I founded a Senegal winery. That was another winery some of you might know out there. I still make the wines from Ritchie and Olima. That's my dog in the background making noises. I apologize.
Beautiful. And I've always really loved the simplicity of the label. The bear. This is you then. This is your brand, and you've got a team of people that help you with this.
Just me, and then I have an assistant in the back of the house who helps me a little bit, and that's Zach Turner, and I have a partner in it as well, Kimberly Jones. So, but this is, she allows me to just run with it, and just as long as I bounce some things off of her monetarily.
Well, it's exciting to watch it. I also carry the Cabernet Oakville from you guys, which has been hugely scored. And these are really authentic single vineyard selections. And today we're tasting the Chardonnay from the Kent Ritchie Vineyard in Russian River Valley. It's a 2020, and it's got this really fun package on it. What can you tell us about Kent Ritchie Vineyard?
Well, I think it's one of the preeminent sites for Chardonnay that you can buy Chardonnay from in West Sonoma County and in Russian River. Legendary site. I mean, you name it, someone makes it, whether it be Demol, Arista. The vines are all 30 plus years old. I mean, really, when I started to make Chardonnay, it's funny, everybody who makes Cabernet always dreams of making Chardonnay and Pinot. We do, because we always want to make what you don't have. And so I spent a lot of time talking about Chardonnay. And really the first thing I wanted to do is deal with heritage clones. I don't want to deal with the Dijon clones. The shop, they call it Shop Berry Wente, was what we're looking for. And because it has hens and chicks, melanderage, they call it. So you have big berries, little berries, very intense. It's more savory than it is fruity, and more roasted grain, more like almond roasted almonds in the nose. A little bit of, like, I always say pineapple husk. But it's not this sort of tutti fruity. It's more like roasted apples. It's not this real tutti fruity, and so that's what I'm looking for when I deal with Chardonnay now. And the second thing is, I mean, this is a preeminent vineyard to buy fruit from. It has vine age. It's 30 plus years old, the vines we have. And his whole vineyard is Shop Berry Wente for Chardonnay. He uses one clone. And so I had the opportunity to get 1.5 tons of it to play one small press load. And I said, let's do it. So, it's totally natural, no yeast, no bacteria, no filtration. So, it's very much classic, hands-off, low or no intervention winemaking.
Well, awesome. Thanks for making time for us today. And we'll be rooting for you and carrying on with Patria into the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look forward to doing some more fun things with you in the future. And thank you for all your time and effort.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Have a good day.
Tony Biaggi.
Heroes of Cal.
This is the Patria 2020 Kent Ritchie Vineyard, Russian River Valley. Love the packaging, beautiful. I've always loved the bear. Every label that he makes might have a little different color on the paper. His Oakville Ranch Chardonnay or Cabernet is one of the top scoring wines of the year. And his wines are exciting. And I think this wine is just incredibly bold, rich, intense, piercing. And I love the way he described it. He was leaning into things like roasted grains, roasted apples, pineapple husk. And when he said that, I smelt the wine. I was like, I kind of get it. I really think that it's a dynamic Chardonnay. This plays at around $60. And this is the least expensive Ritchie Vineyard Chardonnay out there at about $60. They're usually $90, $120, $150 for this fruit. So really a value in the world of Ritchie Vineyard. But his wines are not meant to be inexpensive. They are meant to be artisan. And this is him making a lot of the decisions. I hope you like the wine and feel like it's something you might want to embrace. And please try the other Patria wines as well. They are really special. Just a quick commercial. Coming up next month, our Heroes effort will be around Chardonnay, and I have 6 amazing Chardonnays for you guys next month, and we're going to be going all over the world. I've got interviews scheduled in Chablis, South Africa, Western Australia. We've got top producers in California as well. I think you're going to love the show. We're in Pouilly-Fussé as well with Ferret. So we got some really cool wines on the lineup. Locally, if you live here in LA, next week I've got a winemaker dinner. I call it the Cabernet and Tomahawk dinner. It's actually at a really fun restaurant. They come and bring all these meats to the table and slice them for you one at a time. 17 different meats. As many as 20 different wines we'll be tasting. So it's a really fun event at a very fun restaurant right in Koreatown called M Grill. Our next wine is from a legendary producer named Michael Brown. He is the Brown of Costa Brown. And let's get into it. This is the 96.2019 Russian River Valley Pinot Noir from Chev. We're in Sonoma County, Russian River Valley again, and let's do the video.
I'm Ian Blackburn with Zoom Into Wine, a product of Merchant of Wine. I also have a wine school called learnaboutwine.com. And in this ongoing series of tastings and events, we interview different winemakers and get to know some of the top personalities in wine. Today, I'm talking about Michael Brown. Michael Brown is a famous winemaker now who got started back in the day working at a restaurant in Sonoma called Cyrus. I met Mike Brown and his partner, Dan Costa, as they got started at Cyrus. A little passion for wine, some great connections. They set out and started selling this little brand that they parented themselves. A few years later, the Wine Spectator named Costa Brown Pinot Noir the #1 wine in the world. It's a true romantic story. These guys got started from humble beginnings and grew the brand at such a rapid pace, couldn't keep up with supply. Mike and Dan had some very successful financial transactions where hedge funds literally came in and purchased Costa Brown. And so in the first purchase, they maintained part of the ownership and stayed on as winemakers. And by the second purchase, they were able to jettison wealthy individuals. Kind of a dream story for anybody that's in the wine business. This just doesn't happen once, maybe. And the fact that it happened twice is pretty remarkable and really shows you their business acumen and their quality and their approach. And they really found a lane. Mike Brown had much more to accomplish and wanted to keep his fingers in the wine business and got started at that time when he was with Costa Brown on a little side project called Cirque. Cirque was kind of like if you liked Costa Brown, maybe you wanted to try Cirque. It was this higher end imaginary category that really didn't exist in California Pinot Noir. Only a couple SKUs were really touching this ring of the hierarchy. And when he jettisoned from Costa Brown full time, he was able to fill a big void there by creating a new brand called Chev. And Chev is today what his primary focus is in making wines, and the wine that we're going to taste in our tasting that this video is going to accompany. But Chev really shows you his artisanal wine craftsmanship, and Cirque is really still that ambitious fifth ring in Maslow's hierarchy type of a reach. You know, how far can imagination and wine take us? that's what I categorize it. It is like if Cult Cabernet has a pinnacle producer, Cirque is that to Pinot Noir. That's a high compliment, and I think he deserves it all. Just the fact that he's able to keep his head down, working hard, have something ambitious to work on with his partner, his wife. You make a lot of money in a transaction like selling Costa Brown. You could just disappear and go off and do philanthropic and travel and spend time with family and never be heard from again. The fact that he's keeping his hands pretty busy in the winemaking circuit, making these beautiful products. Here we're looking at the Chev label. It's a really cool story. I think you'll love the wines. He and his wife had a dream and didn't really know how he was going to get there, but I think he found himself at the right place at the right time and surrounded himself with the right people, which is the key ingredient. Today, the Cirque and Chev lineup finds a lot of cool ideas being brought together, some great vineyard designations, some very creative labeling, a true artisan understanding of Pinot Noir. It's a great story. If you're going to try the wines with us today, you're going to try Chev, but we also carry the Cirque wines at Merchant of Wine. We have kept these wines in stock for years. They are for the people that are in the know or wanting to join the club. It is a special club of Pinot Noir enthusiasts that find these wines. And I think it's a style that finds you. My name is Ian Blackburn, and I enjoy producing these videos. If you enjoyed this
All right.
video, I'm Ian Black.
Moving on to the review. Boysenberry and cherry with light pastry cobbler. Gentle aromas of savory spice. Aged black tea and vanilla bean. The mouth, black cherry and juicy red plum intertwined with fresh earth and faint tobacco leaf. Seductively broad texture with vibrant acidity and a silky soft mouthfeel, followed by a suede finish with an earthy characteristic and a balancing high tone. Well-rounded and subtle, finely integrated tannins. 96 points, Jeb Dunnick. Chev Russian River Pinot Noir 2019. I don't have much of it. It is kind of sold in very small lots. As a small retailer, I get a certain allocation each year. And I am now tasting this wine and able to share some opinions with you on it after we decanted these in the small jars on Monday. This wine is now ridiculous. It is fantastic. You just smell this wine, you get lost in this amazingly rich, dense, deep bowl of red fruits. And there's so much complexity here. This is truly pushing the boundaries of Pinot Noir in the right direction. And I love this wine. I'm a little surprised at the slowness of uptake of Chev. I do think that this wine needs time in the bottle to get this good. And I've got the 2019. When I go through the 19, the next wine I'll have is the 21, and it'll be much more youthful and need a little bit more time. This thing is a treasure trove of complexity, richness, ripeness, fruit, spice, and really something rewarding for that special moment. $100 a bottle. I think just returning from Burgundy, I'm really actually pretty the price shock of Burgundy, it kind of desensitizes you a little bit to certain things. And I don't want to say this the wrong way, but $100, this wine really is delivering something special. Now, the Cirque wines are much more expensive and very fancy. And honestly, I don't get to try those unless I take one out to dinner. I get to buy them. But there are very few bottles of that wine, and they are on the website. Think of them for that special occasion. If you like this one, just think of the next layer of possibilities. And I love this wine. There's no buts. This is just fantastic California Pinot. Hope you guys agree. Any comments, questions? I'm seeing some chat from Lisa. Lisa, I should have come to your house. I'm sitting at the Hilton on 4th Street in Santa Monica, Lisa, right down the street.
Right down the street.
Ray, how you doing out there? Do you like this wine, Ray?
Let me unmute myself. Yes, I do. It was really, really good. The description where it was like suede on the mouthfeel, that's what it felt like to me. It was just velvety and rich, and all the berries, the cobbler pastry definitely described it. I really loved it. So, and I had the opportunity to eat at Cyrus when it was open years and years ago, and that was one of the most amazing dining experiences we've ever had. It's beautiful.
Many hours sitting at Cyrus going through the multiple courses.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it was wonderful. They're open again, I think, right?
I think there is a new iteration open there.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. We're rolling on. We've got our next wine in line sites here. Landon running just a few minutes behind. Apologize. Epoch Estate. Jordan Fiorentini. She's going to be our guest winemaker. We're in Paso, just north of Santa Barbara County. Let's hear from Jordan.
Now at Heroes of California Wine, we're going to Paso Robles, and we're going to spend a moment with a great winemaker, Jordan Fiorentini. She is with Epoch Estate, making ridiculously delicious wines in Paso Robles. Hi, Jordan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So glad you could do this with us. We love to pull amazing people together, and these Heroes tastings really let us get to meet some of the most inspired winemakers in California. And I just recently visited Epoch Estate, and it is gorgeous. It is a great visit. If you're going to Paso, you're going to want to go to Epoch because it is, I think, everything that you want in a wine tasting experience. It's got the energy, the views, it's the sense of place, and the wines are truly authentic to Paso, and you've done a great job there, Jordan.
Thank you so much. We will love to have visitors. And we're sitting on top of York Mountain, which is really close to the Pacific Ocean, and one of the oldest bonded wineries in the Central Coast, which was the York Mountain Winery and is now Epoch Estate Wines.
Yeah, that was an amazing transaction. When did that all take place? Because I remember the York Mountain wines, they were pretty historic.
Yes. So we were able to purchase the York Mountain Winery from foreclosure in 2010. But the wines, it started as a winery in 1882. And we've been able to sort of rebuild the history of Paso Robles with the purchase of the old winery. And then also sort of separate from that, but connected, we had already owned and had planted a vineyard on a piece of property in West Paso that we called the Patria Vineyard. And we named it after a Polish pianist, composer, and who became a prime minister of Poland, Ignacy Paderewski. He had owned the same property many years ago. We were able to purchase that. He had planted grapes, so we planted grapes where he had planted grapes. And he had actually had the York brothers on York Mountain make his wine. And so we eventually were able to purchase the York Mountain Winery. So now the grapes travel from West Paso, from the Paderewski Vineyard, to further west on York Mountain to be made into wine.
Yeah, that's a great story about Paderewski, because he was like in love with Paso for the health benefits, and like had the vision to plant grapes, because he was like, was he the first? Or
He wasn't one of the first, he wasn't the first, but he was one of the first. And we actually have copies of letters he had written to the professors at the University of California, asking them what varieties to plant on the Central Coast. And they actually told him Zinfandel and Durif is Petite Syrah. So we have both of those varieties planted among many others.
wow, that's fantastic. Well, if for those of you on the Zoom that have been to the venue, I'm not sure if these photos will truly capture all the energy that you get when you visit, because this facility is beautiful. It fits into the landscape. It's large and accommodative. It's modern, and also kind of got kind of an aged sense to it. It feels like it's part of the mountain, and there's great tasting venues. This is a building, an estate that is built for visitation. And that's why I love it so much, because they really had some great vision to build a venue that inspires people to come. And in fact, I think you have people that go like every time they go to Paso.
Yes, we do. We have an amazing staff, and we have so many friends through Epoch. It's just incredible. And we do a flight tasting format, so you get all the wines poured for you, and you can go back and forth. And we're changing those up all the time too. And so it makes it fun to revisit, or we'll do there'll also be special tastings, like a library tasting. I really built the wines to age, and I'd love to showcase that in the tasting room.
So just a couple more shots from Paso here in the Epoch Estate. And today we're going to taste the estate wine, which I think this is like your largest blend, right? This is like what you do. You have all these little wines that you're able to showcase, single varietals or single vineyards, but
Mhm.
put it all together to create this estate wine that's really your ambassador, right?
Exactly. Our estate blend is basically a snapshot of all of our vineyards that we have planted. And as grape growers and winemakers, when we decide to plant a vineyard, we match the hillside and the soil and the climate to the rootstock and the variety, but not only the variety, maybe the clone within that variety. And all of those decisions for Epoch Estate Wines is in that bottle.
Well, this wine got not one, but two 97-point scores. It is a Syrah-based Rhone blend with a little twist, because you've got kisses of Tempranillo, Graciano, Carignan, and Zinfandel. So truly a Paso blend.
Really a Paso blend. I like to say it's a Syrah-based blend with Grenache, Mourvedre, and then Tempranillo for some more structure. And then whatever we have that Mother Nature has given us, that's maybe a little extra that year. Some of those less planted varieties are in our estate. Sometimes they make it into the bottling as well. And that basically is the 2019. It's got almost everything in it. And then it really represents the vintage really well. I really like to not only showcase the varieties in the site, but be very vintage focused in my winemaking. Because I think that's where the fun is, right? That's where Mother Nature really steps in. And I like to honor that as a winemaker. So the 19 was just this amazingly cooler vintage, which I adore the cooler vintages in Paso. Really elegant, longer hang time, really supple, soft tannins. So this wine is just showing beautifully right now.
Tremendous. Well, again, we're going to encourage everybody to come and visit Epic. If, of course, if you're watching our Zoom here, you know how to contact me, and I'd be happy to introduce you to the winery and get you up there. We thank you for making time, and we're going to taste the wine now with the group, and we'll see you in Paso.
Yes, you guys please visit. We love to see you and show you what we've got going on.
Now,
$57. It may be one of the best value propositions on the website. It's definitely a Paso benchmark and an exceptional bottle of wine, especially for those that like the big, the bold, and the powerful, which is where we're heading next. We're going up to Napa for a sensational effort out of Napa Valley called Fortunate Son. And this comes from our friends at 100 Acre. And Landon, who runs 100 Acre, is on the Zoom with us tonight. Hi, Landon.
Coming in hot.
Coming in hot. There you are, buddy.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for making time. Sorry, we're running a little behind. It's been one of those days.
We can't rush the wine, you know what I mean? You know, you have your technical difficulties, you get a little wine going, and then you're gonna, you know, we're easing here, you know. We especially this lineup of wines. Good lineup.
Good lineup, man. Thank you so much. I want to say something that I don't know how you're going to take this, but you know, I've been waiting for you guys to make a wine I don't like. It seems you guys make a lot of wines, and I keep thinking, there's no way you guys can continue to produce so many different bottlings and have me like so many of them. And I opened this wine Monday morning. I remember tasting this with you at Spago a few months ago.
Yeah.
And I liked it then, but oh my God, this wine is just getting so much better by the day. And now out of the little decanters that we put them in, we poured them on Monday morning, fill them to the top. It's like the perfect decantation. This wine is screaming, Landon. It is awesome.
You know, it's funny. I mean, I've been with the company for 13 years now, so I've tasted a lot of our wines. Obviously, probably the owner is the only one that's tasted more than me. And you know, you get to taste them so many times, right? And you get a little slightly desensitized a little bit because I'm tasting them like every day. This wine about 3 months ago just hit like a moment where it just started to like bloom massively. The aromatics started to become more pronounced, more layers in the wine.
Beer, man.
Yeah.
It's just cranking. And I mean, you just check all the great Napa Cabernet boxes. Now, I'm a guy who uses 100 Acre on a regular basis in our top cult wine dinners. And I will tell you this too, Landon. People come, they see Harlan, Scarecrow, Screaming Eagles, you know, all the top dogs, 100 Acres there. It's not as expensive as some of those names, and it pounds the others out of the box. And the 100 Acre wines are so delicious. I don't know what you guys are doing to make them so damn good, but there's a juiciness, there's a tenderness, there's a concentration, there's a focus that I just take somebody with incredible appreciation of what they're doing, hands-on understanding of what they're doing to be able to produce this. And
Well, and I'll sort of highlight, I mean, you know, this lineup of wines you've got, I pretty much drink all the wines that you are showing. I love and you know, I own them, I drink them, I've been on their mailing list. I'm in the wine business. I don't need to be on people's mailing lists. And Michael Brown, Tony Biaggi, Kongsgaard, you know, I'm not as familiar with Epoch, but I'm going to check it out for sure. But one of the things that I highlight about them that is a similarity between us, is the owner winemaker. Is very, very, very important. When you actually rarely meet owner winemakers anymore. You know, wineries are so expensive in California, and to get them going, it's so difficult that a lot of times the people that own them now are very successful doing other things. And then they buy wineries, and then they do a lot of other stuff. And I think, you know, you take, Michael Brown and Dan Costa, they were waiters. They were like making wine in garages. You know, they didn't have the overhead. They didn't have the fancy wineries that a lot of bigger Napa producers have. And that was the same with us. I mean, Jason is the owner. He's the winemaker. We didn't have a winery of our own for, you know, almost 7 years. We were basically, you know, I would say we were like crashing on our friends' couches, making wine in people's wineries, and kind of using, not having sort of all the bells and whistles. And there's a purity to that. You know, there's a singularness. You're literally working with the vineyard and the barrels and making wine. You don't have all the madness around you. And sometimes you don't have all the equipment that you need. And there's also, you know, a blessing in that as well, because you're innovating and you're touching everything. And I think when it comes to our wines, whether it's 100 Acre or Fortunate Son or our newer project, Summer Dreams, it's, you know, Jason doesn't have another job. He's not a, you know, venture capitalist, a private equity person. He only does this. And one little side note, and then we can jump more in the wines, is Jason is a self-taught winemaker. So he did not go to winemaking school. You know, and I hear, you know, even Tony Biaggi, who's a good friend and a freaking amazing winemaker, you know, he had the ability to, you know, take some classes and learn from other winemakers. Jason's style is totally himself because he never learned from anybody else. You know, he's never made wine anywhere. He never interned. He never had assistant winemakers or mentors or consultants. And so his style is completely his because he basically invented it along the way. And I think that's kind of why his wines stand out in a crowd, because there's so much a part of his personality.
Well, the first time I heard of somebody barrel fermenting Cabernet in a barrel was with 100 Acre. I correct me if I'm wrong, but he was doing stuff like 200% French oak, you know, fermenting it in one wood barrel, and then taking it into another brand new French oak barrel. And just people were like talking about, what is this guy doing? You know?
Yeah, there was I can tell you this story because we're on a small group, but you know, it's a funny thing. You know, in the beginning, Jason says, well, you know, this is how I made my wines. This is how I always knew I wanted to make the wines. In reality, we were broke. We had no equipment. We had nothing. We were making wine a barrel at a time. You know, we were literally picking and doing, you know, 10, 15, 20 individual barrel fermentations. When you guys think about a barrel, you know, normally you go to a winery, they have tanks that are 3 ton, 5 ton, 10 ton. They're doing these much larger fermentations. We're literally doing it 1 barrel at a time. We're literally doing our punch downs by hand. And it, you know, some of it was necessity, but it was almost like the way like an Italian cobbler makes a shoe, you know, 1 nail at a time, or a dressmaker. They're stitching every stitch, every bead, and there's a craft to that. And there's a visceralness to it that sort of, whether accidentally or purposefully, became a hallmark of all the wine that we're making. And this wine we're having now, the Fortunate Son Merlot, this wine is 100% barrel fermented and 100% new French oak. You would think this wine would be massive and dense and heavy and inky and all these types of things. And what Jason does is he uses oak like you use salt in a dish. You know, a great chef salts the dish 6, 7 times throughout the cooking experience. So he uses oak to enhance the flavor. And the way he layers it is very, very fine layers in there. And so it creates like a scaffolding or a superstructure in the wine, but doesn't become the flavor of the wine. And that's something that he innovated really in the beginning.
Very cool. Well, I'm sure you've got books of stories that you could be writing about the rise and falls of what what's happening in the great wine industry
Yeah.
in Napa Valley, and maybe you should think about that because this is a really amazing time for all of us in the wine world, and see what's coming out of Napa now, and what we're capable of doing here. It's pretty impressive. And I think that there's absolutely a kind of a seed change where, a lot of the times in the past, Napa was being inspired by places like Bordeaux. And I think today we're inspiring other parts of the world. And it's really, what I'm seeing out there, seeing Napa type of efforts and energies and winemaking production techniques, etc., being used in places like Tuscany and in Bordeaux and in Chile and in Argentina and in Australia, and the whole cab marketplace is paying attention to what Napa Valley is doing now.
Yeah. Yeah. This wine, I'll give you guys just like a hyper condensed little lesson about what Fortunate Son is, because people know 100 Acre, but Fortunate Son is one of our newer projects. Although 2018 was the first vintage, we've been working on it for almost 10 years now, almost 12 actually, before we actually released it. And a lot of people don't really know this, but in the early days of Napa Valley in the 1850s to the 1930s, the number one grape varietal was Riesling for white wine. And for reds, it was Zinfandel and Sangiovese. There was German and Italian, Eastern European immigrants. And they didn't really start planting Cabernet and Bordeaux varietals until the 30s and 40s. And Fortunate Son is a partnership between us and several farming families in Napa that have been farming since the 30s and 40s. They were the first to really embrace Bordeaux varietals in Napa Valley. And, we kind of say a little bit of the tagline of Fortunate Son is that the future is the past. And we go to these sites, you go to these old vineyards that are 100 years old or beyond. These people didn't have geologists. They didn't have ground penetrating radar. They didn't have, UC Davis, but they knew good dirt. And a lot of these early sites that were chosen in the earliest days endure of being the best sites today, even now that we have the technology. And so for Jason, he's not a technical winemaker. He never talks about yeast and oak and fermentation. He talks about spirit and emotion and a place. And he talks about wine much more viscerally than technically. And I think Fortunate Son gave us an opportunity to, re-engage these older vineyard sites that needed some love. They needed some TLC. We basically took the sites over and started farming them like we farm 100 Acre. And within a year or 2 years, we were able to take these sort of historic vineyard sites and like double and triple the quality of the wine and the output. This wine here is a Merlot Cabernet blend, and the Merlot itself is from one of the oldest vineyards in all of Napa of Merlot. It's an 85-year-old vineyard that's all head trained and dry farmed. What head trained basically means is these are like little bushes, right? They're not on the like trellises and the cordons that you see in more modern winemaking. They're like little tiny bush vines. They have no water. There's no irrigation on these sites. And so this is the way wine was made, the way they planted vineyards 100 years ago. And this vineyard, the main core of the vineyard is, one part of it is on the west side of it borders Arajo, or now Islay Vineyard, and the east side borders 100 Acre. So you've got this epic Merlot, old vine, dry farm, kind of like old hermit that's on Grand Cru dirt. And most before us, the wine was just getting bought and just lost and blended into other wines. And now we have an opportunity to sort of like resurrect this heritage site and showcase this is what Merlot tasted like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. This is a kind of a hearkening back, because a lot of the Merlot today is very ripe and it's very heavily oaked and it's very it almost tastes like Cabernet at some point. The aromatics are all like classic, sexy Merlot, red flower and purple flower, graphite, pencil leads, those types of notes in the wine.
And also, I love the fact that you chose to use Petite Sirah as well, because that's such a classic Napa move as well. I mean, people don't realize how important Petite Sirah was in the history of the Napa Valley.
So this is how you know. So the Petite Sirah was almost an accident. You know, back in the day, not just in America, this is in Europe, all over, they would do what was field blending, which means that they would be planting other varietals. Like it wouldn't all be Cabernet. It would be maybe 3 or 4 different varietals in there, and they would pick it all together and harvest it and ferment it all together. This old Merlot vineyard has sections of Petite Sirah that were in there, and Jason originally wasn't going to work with it. And then he said, you know what? We're doing an old school wine. So we actually picked all the Petite Sirah and Merlot and we co-fermented them together. So we didn't produce them separately. And it created a kind of a unique tension between the Merlot and the Petite Sirah that was really special. So think of us using, you know, I don't want to say it's not modern techniques, but it's a more modern approach to a very old school winemaking, farming, and fermentation approach.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Landon, I can't thank you enough for coming and joining us tonight. You're getting some praise on the chat.
Yeah, thanks, George.
You are such a kudos to Jason for finding you and somehow being able to keep you, you know, as the ambassador of the brand, because you are such a great spokesperson for wine, and it's great that you have such great wines to talk about as well. So it's super exciting. I mean, Merlot is such an interesting case study. And you know, I when I started talking about this wine, I started talking about it like it was a Cabernet because of the 100-acre, you know, image. But the Merlot plays as much a part of this wine as any of the grapes, and really doesn't get enough of our love as a great grape variety coming out of Napa Valley as well. So kudos to Jason for really bringing this vineyard into the fold, accepting it, and for the vision of making this project reality. I also love the fact that you can drink this big, beautiful, juicy beast of a wine for a very fair price, from a very famous and highly sought after brand. So you guys have done a great job of keeping the wine pricing, even though it's part of the 100-acre portfolio. And my 100-acre wine sell for $700, $800, $900 a bottle, but this one is in a really, you know, active price point for the high quality single vineyard natured wines of the Napa Valley.
Yeah, if you're looking for value, right now, Napa is a hard place to go. There are a few great guys out there that are still doing it. Oftentimes, they're people that have owned the vineyards for a really long time. But yeah, you know, we're obviously, you know, we love Cabernet, and you know, it pays the bills and it's what made us famous. But in reality, when you start to see what Jason's doing now, you're seeing, yes, beautiful cabs, but we've got this red blend. We've got some Cabernet Franc wines coming out. We have another project called Summer Dreams. That's all from the Sonoma coast. That's Pinot Noir and Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. And so at 60 years old, when a lot of winemakers are starting to retire and they're bringing, you know, consultants in, Jason is doing more wines. He's making new stuff. And I think it sort of, you know, shows who he is as a person. It's like, without winemaking, he's nothing. He'll be a guy that'll, you know, you know, he says if he dies in the winery, then it's a life well lived. And you know, I think the wines themselves are showcasing sort of that tremendous passion.
Awesome, dude. I appreciate you very much. I hope that you'll do another Zoom with us in the future, because I I got to get the Landon show going on here.
Yeah, Ian, I'd love to do it. I want to say one thing, and this isn't shameless self-promotion. Go to fortunatesonwines.com. Check the website out. You want to see a website that is so not wine, like it's a totally different animal. It's a really amazing site because it showcases some unique sections and stories of Napa Valley that people don't know. So anyway, awesome, Ian. Thank you guys so much, and keep drinking the good stuff.
Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Awesome stuff, man. Breathtaking. I think the lineup has definitely delivered on the promise. We have one more. And I always think about including Zinfandel because, you know, my family, we make Zinfandel. And I really think Zinfandel producers just don't get enough love. I purchased a good chunk of Ridge 2021 because I know how good the Ridge Vineyard fruit was in 2021 in Geyserville. And I want to be a supporter of great wine. When I believe in something, I want to take a position on it. And I did with this 2021. And it's just, to me, an underappreciated jewel in my store and in the marketplace. So I want to bring it out. We just tasted some obnoxiously great wine. Now we're going to taste an obnoxiously great wine that's about 1/3 the price of everything else that we just tasted. This is up in Geyserville, which is kind of sits right on top of Dry Creek Wine Valley. In fact, you just drive down the street about 5 minutes, not even that, maybe a half mile from where Ridge sits, and you'll be where my wine is made at the Moritzen venue at the corner of Dry Creek and Lytton Springs. So let's now go in and taste this Ridge Geyserville, which is named after the vineyard and is a vineyard blend. I think you're going to love it.
All right, here she is. And let's let Shauna do her thing. And this is the Geyserville 2021. You know, the name says a lot. Shauna Rosenblum, I'm so happy to see you in such a good place. Tell us about this beauty.
Absolutely. So let's see, Geyserville. This is a long-standing Ridge wine. Our first year that we produced Geyserville was 1966. And let me go back. So Ridge started in 1962. It goes back to a history on Montebello Mountain, which actually the initial vineyard at Montebello was planted in 1885. Oh, there we go. That's awesome. And the history on Montebello it's pretty incredible. So it goes back to 1885. The winery there is built out of limestone. The first vines are planted. Around Prohibition, it kind of gets abandoned. And then 1959, there's 4 Stanford students who start going up there on the weekends and say, hey, we kind of want to revive this vineyard. So they started reviving the vines up there, and 1962 was the first vintage that was bonded for Ridge. And so wine was being made at Montebello for a long time, but there's been a long-standing relationship with the Trentadue family, of Healdsburg. And so our Geyserville vineyard actually surrounds the current Trentadue winery. And the vines for the Geyserville were planted back in the 1880s, 1890s, early 1900s. And the way that we make this wine is we do keep each individual parcel from the vineyard. We ferment each parcel independently. And some are planted only to Zin, some are planted only to Carignan, some are old field blends where we have Zin, Carignan, Alicante, kind of old school field blend. Each parcel is fermented independently using native yeast. And by taste, we decide which ones are the absolute best and which ones make the cut and get to go into the Geyserville. Oh, I'm sorry, my dog.
Right.
He's a sweet boy. He's loud. So yeah, I guess a little bit about me, my background. So I started at my family's namesake winery, Rosenblum Cellars. When I was 3 years old, my dad taught me to read bricks on a refractometer. My Girl Scout troop used to stomp grapes at the winery during harvest. By the time I was 16, I was sitting in on blends with my dad and the winemaking team. My dad and I started a winery called Rockwall in the Bay Area. Our lease ended last year and we decided to give up the space. And I heard from Ridge, and it was interesting. It was like at Rosenblum, we made lots of Zin from old vines. And at Rockwall, we made lots of Zin from old vine. And of course, the answer is yes. So started with Ridge last year and had an awesome harvest last year. And it's been incredible kind of learning the history of the way that we've made wine for the past 61 years and incorporating that into, everything, my kind of lifelong installation of winemaking from my dad and, being around all these wonderful Zinfandel people. I've known Joel Peterson for a long time and Becky from Zap and a bunch of really wonderful community members. So it's been incredible. And working with fruit like this, I was kind of starstruck when I got to start working with like the Geyserville and the Lytton Springs and some of these really incredible old vine vineyards that I've enjoyed for so long. I've been a Ridge Club member for 20 years. So I'm happy. This is incredible. And I'm so happy to be here with all of you guys sharing this incredible wine and learning about Zinfandel. And I tasted through this whole lineup from my colleagues' wines, and they're just so impressive. So it's quite an honor to be here with you all tonight.
Wow, so great. I also need to say as a Zin fan, as a wine fan, I'm not sure there's a brand in wine, not just Zin, but in wine that has made more impressions, than Ridge. I think Ridge is whether you're, because you make a number of different wines as well, Chard, Cab, but in the Zin spectrum, you've really been so important to really showing people the uniqueness of place and the way that you present it on the label and the different wines that you make. It's been an iconic movement and super important to the industry. And that's just obvious. But the 2021 is drinking phenomenally. These wines are definitely age worthy. And do you like it when people say, because I'm going to say it, and I want to know what you think of it, is being described almost claret-like? Do you think that's a fair way of describing the wine?
I do actually, and it's interesting you say that because we do our largest export is in the UK, and when I talk to a lot of our folks in the UK, a lot of them make that comparison that aged Geyserville, aged Lytton Springs is really quite reminiscent of aged Bordeaux, which is interesting because when I first heard that, I was like, oh, okay. And then, I started looking for it a little bit, tasting these older vintages. The oldest vintage I've had the opportunity to taste of Geyserville was back to 1972. And I have to be honest, I had very low expectations going in. I didn't know what to expect except old wine. And it blew my mind. It still had so much primary young energy to give, and being a 50-year-old wine, it's incredible. So yeah, I'd say that is a fair comparison.
Well, not only are the labels like timeless, but so are the facilities. But the vineyards, tell a story. And if you ever get a chance to go out and see the ranch and just take a look at those vines. They're ancient and they really are amazing to behold.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We'd love to host any of you if you'd like to come visit. This is, you'd be sitting right there on that little porch, looking over this beautiful vineyard. So yeah, we're open 7 days a week. Give us a holler and come say hi and taste some delicious ridge wine.
And Joel made a great comment there. We're talking about 100% American oak on this wine, on all the zins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm seeing the chat. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Joel, for bringing that up. Yeah, since 1962, Ridge has used exclusively American oak. And that's because Paul Draper in 1962, when he joined a little bit after that, said, if we're going to make the best wine in America, we have to use American oak. And it's interesting because when I think about the use of 100% American oak, it sounds really aggressive, as American oak can be. And so we're pretty judicious with our new oak, really only doing about 10% on Zinfandels, to try and keep all those sort of beautiful old vine qualities, the minerality. I mean, for me on the Geyserville, the minerality is something that's so special. I mean, it's grown in the ancient Russian riverbed, right? So really kind of gorgeous minerality that shows through 130-year-old vines. The roots are super, super deep.
Another great photo. Just a feature of the 21 harvest.
I have been in wine for my whole life, and Ridge has always been a part of it. $50 a bottle for the Ridge Geyserville. This is a 2021 is a beautiful investment. I would buy some to lay down. You would be amazed how well these wines age. There's a restraint in Ridge wines. This wine's probably right at the 14% alcohol mark. Sometimes they're in the 13s. They do things in a very classic manner, from the label to the way the wines are made. It's just a super dependable brand, and always very interesting to taste and explore and to share. I hope you guys enjoyed the Ridge Geyserville 2021. You could probably go to the store now and see some 22s starting to hit the market. I still have the 21, and it's going to be a holding for us for a while, because I took a pretty big chunk back in I think it was maybe almost a year ago that I made that video with Shauna. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. I see we have a couple of Dylan Box on the Zoom with us. Thank you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Always great to see you, Michael and Marcia. Thank you. Or where are you Zooming from, Marcia?
I'm in Del Mar.
Del Mar. All right. Cool.
It's actually Marcia. Not to
Marcia.
correct you, but Marcia, yeah.
Good to meet you. Thanks for being here. Lisa, thanks for joining us. Always great to see you, Ray. Thank you very much, George, Satsuko, and others. I hope you enjoyed the lineup, and I hope to see you guys again soon. And I'll be back at Zoom headquarters next week. Be well, everybody. Go Dodgers!
Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Ryan.
Bye.